Welcome, viewing audience, joining us from around the country and beyond the country and around the world. We thank you for joining us for our first Sunday address in the tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad, delivered by his partner and successor, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. We begin by greeting as we greet each other as Muslims. Peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. We're thankful again to be here for our first Sunday address. The theme being researching our faith and supporting business life in our community. I am your host today, Terenzo El-Amin, Imam and business owner of El-Amin Priority Distributors here in Cincinnati, Ohio, the maker of the beautiful Bilalian apparel, and distributor of both of Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad's books, Democracy, Civic Virtue in Islam, the Muslim American Jihad Against Extremism, and his second book on Nature and Nations, the Muslim American Message for Humanity in the Day of Religion. Go to elaminprioritydistributors.com to purchase both of these two excellent books highlighting the teachings and the thinking of Imam W.D. Muhammad in this time after him. Before we get into the address by our leader, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad, we would like to share a few announcements regarding the public addresses to take place throughout the country within the next 60 days. Next Sunday, join us for a live discussion with Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad entitled Living in the Most Serious Times, hosted by Imam Ibrahim El-Amin and Farda Tawab Brown. Living in the Most Serious Times, a live discussion to take place next Sunday on this channel, EAM Speaks, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad's YouTube channel. It will begin at 10 a.m. next Sunday, Living in the Most Serious Times, a live discussion with Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad will be visiting Little Rock, Arkansas, to deliver a public address to the citizens of Little Rock, Arkansas and beyond on Sunday, September 14th, 2025. For more information, you can go to eamspeaks.com. On Saturday, October 25th, join us for the 5th annual Muslim American Leadership Day observance that will take place Saturday, October 25th, 2025 in Newark, New Jersey. This is an observance that's honoring the leadership and legacy of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Quote, in the spirit and truth of our Islamic life in America, built upon the foundation of faith in its correct picture, expression, and understanding, and reconciled precisely to Muhammad the Prophet's methods, example, and leadership, and the guidance received and demonstrated by him, I, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad, ask that our people who have the experiences of the African American spiritual and social plane of Muslim life influence celebrate October 30th from now and forward as our Muslim American Leadership Day. This will take place in the city of Newark, New Jersey on Saturday, October 25th, 2025, our 5th annual Muslim American Leadership Day, with major public address coming from his partner and successor, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. For more information, you can go to MuslimAmericanLeadershipDay.com. On the third and fourth Sunday of every month, join us in the participation in the class called WDM School of Islamic Thought and Practice. This class begins at 9 a.m. It's a free class led by Muslim American leader Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. The class centers on researching Islam as faith, knowledge, and action in America and the modern world. Instruction and reasoning, Tyranny, in the WDM School of Islamic Thought and Reasoning, led by Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. To sign up for this free class, go to eamspeaks.com, hit the tab WDM School of Islamic Thought and Practice. Tune in every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern to our public affairs program on Facebook Live entitled Bilalian Voices in the Tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad. This takes place every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern in the Facebook group called The Guided Tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Get the whole picture of Muslim African American life and leadership excellence, Bilalian Voices in the Tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Now, I would like to introduce the one that Imam W.D. Muhammad prepared for this time to lead in an excellent way. I'd like to introduce the leader of the God-conscious movement of freedom, justice, and equality for the sacred person, Muslim American leader, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad.
Thank you. Praise be to Allah, the guardian, evolver, cherisher, and sustainer of all the systems of knowledge, all that exists. He is the Lord Creator. We turn to Him for support, and we seek Him for forgiveness of our shortcomings, our wrongs. We put our trust in Him. We leave results of our good efforts to the order of His plan. Our successes are in the context of His plan, and the improvement path toward more and more excellence is intended to be in service of obedience to Him. We thank God for this life that we have, and even in spite of the difficulties in the present world, we thank God for opportunity to think through these difficulties and to make valuable contributions to the improvement of human life and human society on this earth. There is no life for any human being without some struggle, some challenge, some difficulty, some tests. If we are seeking for a life that has no difficulty and no struggle, and just a life of comfort and ease, we'll be missing something latent in our created character as human beings. God says that He has created us for struggle. That's not to say that we're not to seek comforts. What God has created, He has made it all to be of service to man. But within the discovery of its properties, that is, the properties of creation itself, within the discovery of those properties, to find supports for human progress. There is intellectual struggle, there is physical struggle, there is moral struggle. And to uncover the dignity of human life that has been targeted by the enemy of man, there is perhaps the most meaningful struggle in the modern times that we are enduring presently. There are movements largely being led by the circumstances of the change of rule or government authority in the United States of America. Efforts to change the order of relationships between peoples on this earth. I have said recently in a very important address in Rochester, New York, that we are living presently in the time of tyrannical rule. That is to say that there are entities who have gotten momentum and view themselves as supreme authority on the earth to structure and manipulate and direct human life for its purposes. And its purposes are to utilize human life in its potential. That is the common life, the common human life, and common human beings to utilize their potential for the extraction of resources, etc., to support their existence, not to support necessarily the common human life's existence, other than an existence of servitude to tyrannical interests. Perhaps we can research history and say that every age has struggled with such influences, but we are living now in a time where this movement is clear. Even in this country, these United States of America, which champion, it is said, the potential of the human individual, even in this country, we are seeing the movement toward establishment of authoritarian rule. Seems in some ways unconscionable that such could happen in America. But it is clear. America has its troubles historically, and those who have been victimized by what is present or has been present in the hypocrisy of American leadership. And that's not to say that all American leadership is hypocritical. It's not. But in spite of these present hypocrisies, there is potential, moral potential, in the environment of American social discourse for the establishment of powerful and far-reaching moral influence. I am one that was instructed and socialized, specifically instructed and specifically socialized to see that the African American people in a discussion on their distinction as a people would be prepared to make a rare and timely contribution prepared by circumstances, historical troubles, in challenge to the promises of democracy, that they are a people, or had been a people, that history clearly focuses as being denied the promises and guarantees of a society that claimed for itself recognition of the dignity of man before God or before a creator. And because of those circumstances, because of that denial, that the African American people would be prepared to establish themselves upon core universal values and principles, advancing, arguing, discussing, defending the notion that human life is sacred. Before God, there is no more important discussion. The sanctity of human life is the most central matter that God has created everything to support the excellence of man. And this consciousness is clearly registered, clearly put in focus by the teaching in the religion of Islam. It is the Quran, the word of God, as given to Muhammad, the prayers and the peace be upon him, that identifies him as a mercy to all the systems of knowledge, a mercy. In Muhammad, in his character, and he said that he has come for no purpose other than to teach good character. In his character is salvation for the reach of those that seek and want to establish that all human beings have equal possibilities and potential in the plan of God. To exercise that, to realize that as a cornerstone for the development of human society is struggle. And Muhammad, in his character, taught the nature of that struggle, the aims of that struggle, the disciplines associated with what is acceptable before God within the context of that struggle that form itself as philosophies and points of view, perspective, disciplines. It is Muhammad who discusses all of the major concerns, all of the major discussions in the history of man that want to focus and characterize what is man's purpose before God, what is man's relationship with God, what is God's plan in the nature of man for the development of human society. So it is our witness as Muslims to say, on behalf of humanity and on behalf of the finest movement in the intellect of man, that it is witnessed that there's nothing to be worshipped except the one Lord and Creator, and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger. It is the witness of the intellect. It is the witness of the soul. On behalf of the interests of human life to establish itself in society for realization of its potential excellence, that Muslims, on behalf of humanity, state this clearly, definitively, and with principle. And this recognition, these recognitions, characterize a singular and important contribution in this time for the following of Wallace D. Muhammad, or W. Dean Muhammad, the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is why in all of our offices, that is the office of the Muslim American Ministry for Human Salvation, which is the office of my ministry, that there's a reference to the tradition of Imam W. Dean Muhammad. And, you know, this may be a source of confusion and maybe difficulty for some Muslims. They wonder, I suppose. They don't tell me directly, but I sense that they wonder why we mention this, why we say this, the tradition of Imam W. Dean Muhammad, and this particular, for example, this address that I'm giving today, First Sunday address in the tradition of Imam W. Dean Muhammad, etc. Why are we emphasizing this? They might argue, this is Muslims arguing this, they might say, it is enough to say el-Islam. It is enough to say that you're a Muslim and you're teaching from, or you're representing the teachings of the Holy Quran and the teachings of Muhammad the Prophet, that this is sufficient. And in the general sense, it is sufficient. But it cannot be erased from the social history of man on this earth that a people were set in the context of the moral discovery of the worth of man. And that context, that social context, was an experiment with freedom called the United States of America, that a people were set in that context, in that social environment. And while that society was claiming for itself these perspectives and these ambitions on behalf of human dignity and human sanctity, that within that context, that people were being denied. that there was in that reach the possibility of denial and justification of that denial, that the world can claim for itself this movement and at the same time justify the mistreatment of a people. That people prepared to speak on behalf of the human soul that had been denied, even within the context of this claim on the dignity of man. You can see the tension in that. And you can see the need for the clarity of sensitivity and the clarity of reasoning and the clarity of speech, the clarity of example. So when we say the tradition of Imam W. Deen Muhammad, this is what we are emphasizing, that there is a particular language discipline that has been prepared by way of those social circumstances that I just described, but tempered by the influence of Islamic teaching. Purified by the precision and perfection of Muhammad the Prophet's uswa. And this is a term that may not be accessible to everyone. When we think of Muhammad, I'm referring to Muslims, and I know that there are big numbers of Muslims who are watching us now, but there are non-Muslims watching too. But we think of Muhammad and we think of his sunnah. We think of what is described as his sunnah. And this is referring to his habits, his teaching, his words, etc. But there's something that represents the foundation of his human claims, that within its recognition is the embrace of the principle of equality, the equality of man, equal access to the dignity of human creation. In Muhammad the Prophet's model example is access to that moral foundation and moral summit. And there must be representation of that in the world in troubled circumstances, in troubled times. Whatever the political ambitions of a people, for example, the people of Palestine, Palestinian people, whatever is described as their political ambitions, and we could say that their political ambitions are satisfied in the realization of a state. And that means an entity that exists, that is acknowledged by other political entities, other nations, and that within that entity, those people have the dignity of citizenship. This is what is referred to as a state. This is political ambition, political interests, political ends, political language. But fundamentally is the recognition that a human person is entitled to the accommodation and recognition of society. That's what is at its core. And that argument has to be made not by those who have only researched the movements of man in the history of mankind, but it also has to be made by those who have been denied, and not with the spirit of retribution or revolution or rebellion, but in the context of the design of human life in its inherent properties that include the role of struggle, the nature of struggle, the dignity of struggle, the worth of struggle, the behaviors and proper thinking that is acceptable to God within the context of struggle. There is a pride that is acquired, earned, a pride that is earned, that is associated with what is proper for struggle. What is proper? What is proper thinking? What is proper behavior? What is proper reasoning in the context of struggle? When a person and peoples are set upon by forces focused on their destruction, focused on extracting or taking away from them their dignity. Within that context, they still acknowledge that they are the creation of God and that God has a plan for their soul, even in that heavy and weighted, oppressive condition. So I argue that there is more an extended responsibility to express what is Islam in this context, more than just to say then that I or my people are Muslims. There's more responsibility. And there is a distinguished responsibility within the expression of Muslim life that embraces, on behalf of the standards that have been established by Muhammad, embraces a particular emphasis and has been formed by a particular sensitivity in the interest of securing, in the age in which we live, proper access to the understanding that every human soul is sacred and that human life must embrace, clothe itself in that recognition in order to save society. This has to be the fundamental property in any moral political objective. So we are seeing now that nations like Canada, for example, Western nation, has separated itself from other nations in recognition of the right of the Palestinian people to a state. It's not only a statement of political recognition. It is a statement that says that the Palestinian people, in their pursuit of dignity and in the assault on that dignity that they have sustained, that they have the right of recognition, that they are a human people, deserving, worthy of universal human recognitions. God says in the Quran, the holy book of Muslims, and the book is called Mubin, the clear book. Its nature is clarity. Clarity is not imposed upon it. It exudes clarity. I saw where recently someone was speaking of Quranic clarity as if their commentary was clarity on the Quran. No, the Quran is discussion of every significant matter that affects the human soul in its moral design as God created it, in its relationship with God, and in its pursuit of what represents standards of human existence for excellence and establishment in society. The Quran is a discussion and a finality to that discussion, meaning that it ends or concludes the discussion with clarity. We can comment on it, but we are only commenting on that which is inherent to the message itself. And far too often, we see Muslim leaders making a contribution to confusion in the life of Muslim people. I don't want to digress in that direction, although it's an important matter and it does need attention, but I don't want to go into that direction today. God says in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْسِبُ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ إِلَّا عَلَيْهَا. Every soul earns what it deserves. Or literally, no soul deserves except what it has earned. No soul is deserving except what it has earned. وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. And it continues, no responsible party can ultimately be responsible for another who also has responsibility. ثُمَّ إِلَّا رَبِّكُمْ مَرْجِعُكُمْ. Your goal in the end is to your Lord. This verse from the Quran, alongside other descriptions of the soul, that God has created human life, all of it, from a nafsin wahida, the original human entity, the original human soul. And that human soul is singular and it is shared. Its properties are shared across male and female from the beginning of its creation until the present. We claim honor in the context of the creation of Adam, the first human, and nafsin wahida, the original human. This verse from the Quran, it says that within the properties of the soul are access to development, progress, successes, and even that those successes come by way of tests and troubles, and that a soul, that is the human individual, has been created to earn for itself recognition, that it has inherent properties that move it, compel it for universal recognitions. And no individual or group can alter that nature. It is a protected reality, protected by God. It is a sacred, inviolable place. And all of the edifices that are associated with sacred precincts, edifices, the masjid at Mecca, the masjid at Jerusalem, the masjid at Medina, sacred places, sacred precincts, really are just a brick and mortar manifestation of recognition of this sanctity in the human soul, that it has a singular recognition from God Himself, and that the responsibility and the duty to what is required of common respect for it comes from God. Marji'ukum, the return to what? The return to the recognition that God gave the human soul when He created it. Every people have a claim on this. Every individual has a claim on this. And it is in the plan of God that every people have a discussion to represent themselves within this recognition. Every people have a claim. Every people have a contribution. Every people have a language to discuss this matter. And Muhammad the Prophet, the prayers and the peace be on him, his language is the best discussion. That which was revealed to him is the best discussion, the most truthful discussion, the most universal discussion, the all-encompassing discussion. This is of the discipline of Islamic thinking. This is of the discipline of Islamic reasoning, that what comes from the mouth of the preachers of Islam should be intended to reform human life in the direction and the purpose of excellence, that it has not in it a whiff of oppression or confusion, that it has not within it arrogance, or refusal to defend what is intended by God as universal human and moral recognitions for the dignity of human life. This verse in the Quran, it says that it suggests, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةُ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. No responsible one can ultimately be responsible for another who also bears responsibility. Meaning that every single people must claim for themselves recognition of these universal properties and must establish themselves within that recognition. And there may be challenges to that movement, but even within the space of those challenges, there is still the demand, there is still the necessity. Now, I will conclude with this statement from the Quran. And this statement, I say statement because the verse is preceded by the word qul. Qul means say. Say this. This is a command. قل إن صلاتي ونسكي والمحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمون. Say, truly, surely, my prayer, my service of sacrifice, my life, and my death are all for Allah, Lord of all the systems of knowledge. No partner has He. This I am commanded, and I am the first of those who bow to His will. This statement is a statement of purpose, a statement of clarity and argument in the context of political movements, economic movements, intellectual movements, social interests. This statement is a clarification as to what constitutes an ethically principled, morally disciplined foundation for the argument that human beings have entitlements and proper recognitions and demands in society, and that human life, according to the design upon which God created it, states negotiates and concludes that all that God has created, everything, every galaxy, planet, star, everything that God has created in the physical and moral universe has been created to exclaim the dignity of man and to support man's possibilities in the forming of society. That this is human purpose. And the language of Imam W. Deen Muhammad, the language of Muslim African Americans, is that we make the sacred claim to it. Thank you. We thank God for your patience and your attention. And we seek his approval for what we have stated today. And we ask him for the guarantees of success. Assalamu alaikum.